This is number 4 out of 5.4. It says the population mean and standard deviation are given below. Find the required probability and determine whether the given sample mean would be considered unusual. So it says for a sample of n equals 75, find the probability of a sample mean being greater than 221 if mu equals 220 and our standard deviation sigma is 6.1. Okay, so let's see if we can't figure this thing out here. Let me see. So the question says, find the probability of a sample mean being greater than 221. So we're trying to figure out what's the probability that x is going to be greater than 221. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to convert our x value to a z-score. And since we're dealing with sampling distributions, remember the formula to convert to a z-score is still going to be x minus mu. I'm going to put this in parentheses, remember when I do this on my calculator. But instead of dividing simply by the standard deviation, I'm dividing by the standard deviation divided by the square root of n, because we're dealing with a sample here, right? Okay, so our x value is 221 minus our mu was 220. Our standard deviation is 6.1. And our n value here was 75, okay? So let me go ahead and do this on my calculator. So 221 minus 220, 6.1 over square root of 75. So 221 minus 220 divided by 6.1 divided by the square root of 75. Let me get out of that little square root, close my, okay. So I want you to notice the z-value that I'm coming up with. I'm coming up with a z-value of 1.42 when I go to 2 decimal places. Okay, so now we're coming up with our z-value of 1.42. Okay, so remember what this means. If I draw my picture, that's a pretty ugly picture, Omar. You could do better than that. Okay, this is a little bit better. All right, so here's my z-score of 0. 1.42 is going to be, I don't know, somewhere about right here, right? 1.42. And because this is greater than, we're looking for the area to the right, okay? Looking for the area to the right. So on my calculator, the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to go normal, CDF, oops. Remember, my lower bound in this case is going to be 1.42. Because I'm going all the way to the right, my upper bound is going to be a whole bunch of 9s, okay? So let me come back to my calculator again. Let's go second bars, normal CDF, 1.42, comma, 0.42, comma, and then a whole bunch of 9s, okay? And if you notice, to 4 decimal places, I'm coming up with 0.0078. Okay, so 0.0078, and guys, my math lab has a little bit of tolerance, meaning if I come up with 0.0078 or 0.0079, they're not going to be too picky about it, okay? And that's just the number that I came up with. I'm double checking. Yeah, that's just what we came up with. Okay, so now there's a second part, and it says the sample mean, and I'm taking a look at my laptop right now. Let me see if I can come back to it. Here we go. Okay, and for this part here, let me see, this part right here is going to give you some options, okay? So the first part is going to say either would or would not, okay? Be considered unusual because either it lies or does not lie within the range of an unusual event. Namely, okay, so somewhere back, and this is like somewhere in chapter 1 or 2 or something like that, let's see. We had we had our average, and then we had 1 deviation and 2 deviations and 3 deviations to the left and to the right, okay? And as long as we were within 2 deviations, okay, we were considered normal. And then anywhere between 2 and 3, whether to the left or to the right, these were unusual. And then anything to the left of 3 or to the right of 3 was like very unusual. Okay, so for the first part, we would say it would not. I know this is kind of messy. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. Oops. Do this. Come back here. Choose a picture. The one we were doing. There we go. Okay. So here, for this part here, I would say it would not, because it lies within the range of a usual event, namely within 2 standard deviations. Okay. Oops, standard deviations. Okay. So again, I'm going to kind of try to draw that thing that we had, and it looks something like this. And here was 0. Oops, that looks messy. And this one was 0 and 1 and 2 and 3 and -1 and -2 and -3. And so this here, guys, was considered normal. This piece here and this piece here was unusual. There you go. Try to make sure I spell it right. And the green part, which would be on the outside of 3's, was considered very unusual. Okay, so I hope that helps. I hope that provides a little bit more information. Have you guys got any questions?